Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Relatable Radio Hour with me, Dr. Green. Thank you so very much for joining. Tonight, I'm always excited to say this because I just love talking about the different topics that we say, but I really do mean what I'm saying this. I really enjoy talking about this particular topic because I think it's important for everybody to walk in their purpose and do things that are in their purpose. Because if you're not doing things that aren't in your purpose, then what's the point in doing it? And I know we've had a lot of conversations about this, but I'm really excited about tonight's guest's interpretation of that very thing. And I'm bringing to the show another fraternity brother. I do this a lot, just to let you know. I do this a whole lot. So this is like a thing. But I'm bringing another fraternity brother of mine to the show to share his nuggets with us as it regards to going towards something in your purpose. I want to just introduce to you all tonight's guest, Brother James Pickett. Brother Pickett, how are you doing, sir?
I am doing quite well, and I want to thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you for making some time to make it happen because I know that you have a really busy schedule, so I don't take that for granted. I'm really excited to have you here, so thank you again for just being here. I didn't, share your position or anything like that, but share your position with us tonight and just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and what's brought you here tonight.
Okay, first of all, I am a retired law enforcement officer. I did 28 years with the Evanston, Illinois Police Department. Um, Started in 1992. I retired in 2020, as a matter of fact. 28 years. Um, I retired as a deputy chief. I had several positions within the police department: patrol officer, detective, gang crime officer, sergeant, commander, and lastly, deputy chief. And that was my last 5 years. After retirement, I sat at home for about a year and a half, and I needed to unwind a little bit. So I sat at home, took care of my grandkids. I have right now I have three, but at the time I had two grandsons. They came over, but I really wanted to work again. So currently, I'm an investigator with the Internal Affairs Division of the Chicago Fire Department, and I've been in that position since November of 2021. So I'm almost at 3 years. So we do internal affairs investigations, background investigations, things of that nature. So that's what I'm currently doing.
That's awesome. I mean, for you to, switch from the law enforcement side, I mean, it's kind of still in that same arena, doing
Correct.
the work that you're doing, and then to switch over to doing what you're doing now, I think that's amazing. So I already know that you have a lot of knowledge to share with us tonight, and I'm excited to dig into that a little bit more. But tonight, in talking about the purpose, I've always known people who are in law enforcement to had something that happened to them to get them interested in it, going after it, and just really excelling in that field. So talk to us a little bit about just growing up, going in the direction that you went into. Talk about, just how you kind of got into it, or I'll put it this way. What was it about it that kind of got you interested in it when you were a younger individual?
I have to be honest with you. It's going to sound a little corny,
Okay.
but ever since I was a little kid, I was just amazed by police officers. I was one of those little kids who, whenever we played cops and robbers, I volunteered to be the cop all the time.
Oh, wow.
My father, even this is actually before I was born, but my father was a Chicago police officer for about 2 or 3 years. And he resigned from the force before I was born, but he would tell me certain stories about it when I was a little kid. But my mother's oldest brother actually retired from the Chicago Police Department. He did 25 years with him, and that guy was my hero. There were times when he would, I'm talking about when I'm in first and second grade, he would come over and he's in his uniform, and I'm just staring at him. I'm like, wow. And so I was always interested in it, and at first it was the excitement about it, watching the
Hmm.
cop movies, the cop shows. But it was always something about law enforcement that I knew since I'm talking 5, 6 years old. And I said, you know what? That's what I want to do. And I've always stuck with it. And my mother would always say, ever since you was a little kid, that's all you talked about.
Mm.
And so, I mean, I'm talking when Officer Friendly, we had an Officer Friendly program at my first grammar school. And when Officer Friendly used to come, um, I would get so excited just listening to him, listening to the things that he would talk about, safety issues.
Hmm.
And I really was just amazed by it. So I would come home from school and say, Mommy, Officer Friendly was at the school, and just start talking about it. But over the years, it never changed. It was
Wow.
something about law enforcement, and I think initially it was just the excitement,
Hmm.
the and I'll be honest with you, the unrealistic part of it, seeing the cop movies and the action and Shaft and
Yeah.
all of those things. But as I got older, it was more about a service thing. It was something that I really wanted to do in my life to serve others and to be a protector, and
Mm.
never changed. It never, as I grow, went through grade school, even the interactions I had with law enforcement, some positive, some were negative, but it never changed my mind about what I wanted to do. And as I got older, and I'm talking about through high school, there was a certain type of officer that I wanted to be.
Wow.
I wanted to be approachable.
Hmm.
I didn't want to be this stereotypical mean,
Right.
abusive cop. I never wanted to do that. I
Right.
wanted to be that type of officer where people looked up to, people felt that they can come talk to me. And I really never changed my mind. So as I was going through high school, I chose a college because I started looking at colleges, and I found a college that was renowned for law enforcement. And that was Western Illinois University. It's in Macomb, Illinois. And they had, at the time, they had one of the top law enforcement criminal justice programs in the country. And then when I was a junior in high school, I went down to visit, and I went to the law enforcement department. They talked about it. I looked at the brochures and I said, this is where I wanted to go. Because even though at the time the majority of law enforcement agencies didn't require a 4-year degree, most of
Hmm.
them require 60 hours, at least 60 hours of college. But getting a college degree is something that I wanted to do. That was one of my goals, one of my aspirations. And I always promised my mother that, no, I'm going to college. Because when I told her I was going to law enforcement, I think she thought, you don't want to finish school? No,
Right.
I'm going to get my degree. And
Hmm.
so that's one of the things. I made it into Western. I majored in law enforcement administration and also sociology. And that was just sort of one of the first stepping stones that I made to try to get into law enforcement. But there was something that I never shied away from. I never said, well, maybe I'll be a lawyer, maybe I'll be a doctor.
Hmm.
I've never went away from wanting to be in law enforcement. And so those were several steps that I had to take in order to get that degree and to, make sure that I was qualified enough to get into law enforcement.
Hmm. It's amazing when people are hit with the bug of what they want to do at a young age because so many things can happen from when you're very very little until like that high school age. So many things can change, and so many mindsets can go through you. But it sounds like you had a very consistent tone and love and adoration for that law enforcement capacity. Having that family impact too, I'm sure
Oh
was a big
yeah,
part of
that was one of the things, talking to my
it.
uncle about his experience, especially in the 60s. He started in 1965, and he started during the civil rights era, and
Oh,
where it was,
wow.
sort of controversial for
Of
African American
course.
to be in law enforcement.
Yeah. So
But
did he have a lot of stories about that time?
oh
Because
yeah, he had a
imagine
lot of
that was
stories, and it was very interesting talking to him because I would sit down and just listen to him, and he talked about the negatives, the positives, and unlike me, law enforcement wasn't something that he aspired to do. It was something that at the time, he was married and that he had 3 children at that time, and he wanted a nice paying job. But he said, well, you know what? Maybe I'll take the Chicago police test. And he got in, but he loved it. That was something that he really enjoyed doing that. And so he would talk to me about it. And when I told him, I remember when I told him I wanted to be a police officer, at first he sort of looked at me like, are you sure you want to do this? But he
hmm
saw that I was serious about it. And I told him. And I remember in 19, and I still have this picture, in 1974, Christmas 1974, I was 7 years old. And he came over right from work and he stopped by the house, and he's in his uniform. And I'm looking at him like, oh, wow. So my mother said, "You guys take a picture." And
Yeah.
that's back in the days when you had the Kodak
Oh yeah,
and you
yeah,
had to put the flash bulb on.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
she took a picture, and he has his arm around my waist, and I'm just looking, admiring. I'm just admiring this guy. So fast forward to 1992 when I graduated from the police academy, you were able to invite somebody that was in law enforcement, pin your badge on you. So I chose my uncle. And after the ceremony, my mother said, "You guys get together right now. Let me take a picture of you." And so we didn't think nothing of it. So I'm in uniform, he's in civilian clothes. She took a picture, and then she pulled out the old picture from 1974. And so in my photo album, I have the picture of me as a little kid next to him in a uniform, and now me in a uniform, and he's in civilian clothes. So he was definitely my inspiration to be in law enforcement.
That's amazing. That's like a full circle moment too. I'm sure when that
Yes, it
picture was
was
taken.
definitely,
I mean,
definitely
to see that and just to have that to look at and just to admire and just be like, wow, this is something that I wanted to accomplish and I did, and I was able to commemorate this with the very person that
right.
inspired me probably the most to go after this. So I just want to, I'm curious. This is my brain just being
Okay.
curious.
Mm-hmm.
When you did say to your uncle, "Hey, I want to be a police officer," and he kind of just looked at you, he really didn't take you seriously. Uh, like, what was the conversation? I'm sure he gave you some tips or some type of advice.
But you know what? At the time, I think it was because I was, like you said, I was young when I said it.
Hmm.
And so he looked at me, and I think he sort of smiled, but at the same time, he was like, "Are you sure?" But I think because I was at that age, he said, "Yeah." But as I got older, we
Right.
would talk, and I told him I was serious about it, and he was honest about it. He talked about, like I said, the negatives to the job, the down, because there's a lot of negative to it, as far as your own personal well-being. But at the same time, he talked about the positive,
Hmm.
and that's what I looked at because I looked at the positive part of it, something that I really wanted to do. And so I kept pushing. And once I finally did it, he was proud. He was very proud that I did it.
Hmm.
Like I said, he was beaming at my graduation. He
Hmm.
was very proud. But he was very, like I said, at the same time, he was very realistic as I got older about some of the things that you're going to see, some of the things you're going to experience, some of the um, alienation that you experience from people. I mean, and let's be real, there's some people like you, police officers, you know. But
Yeah.
but like I said, it never deterred me. I never once looked at, what, maybe I shouldn't do this. Even with the controversial side of law enforcement, I never said, no, maybe I don't want to do it. I wanted to do it and make it better.
Hmm.
I wanted to have an impact. And like I said, I know that sounds corny, but I'm sure that, and you know what, I'm 100% certain that you can go into the community of Evanston and find people that said, you know what, how was Officer Pickett? How was he?
Hmm.
And I think I made a positive impact because there was something they knew I cared because I did.
Hmm.
I did.
Hmm.
And that's the way I approached this job. I said, you know
Hmm.
what, I'm gonna do this job because it wasn't a job to me. It was a calling. I
Yeah.
really felt it. I really felt it in my heart that, you know what, God put me on this earth to be
Hmm.
in law enforcement. I
Hmm.
really believe that. And I said, you know what, I'm not going to blow this opportunity, or once I got there, I wasn't going to damage it. I said, you know what, God, you gave me this position. I'm very thankful, and I'm going to do the best job I can every day. I'm going to try to impact some positive in people's lives, not
Hmm.
just lock them up, lock them up, lock them up. That was never, my mindset. My mindset was to make a difference. I'm out
Hmm.
here trying to protect you, trying to make a difference, and to really talk to people. So
Hmm.
I'm sure, and I'm really, like I said, I'm really certain that there are people that will say that, you know what, he really impacted my life
Hmm. I feel strongly.
positively.
Yeah, right, right, right. I feel
Right,
strongly that
positively.
you definitely had that as a badge of honor to do that, to be and to emulate that police officer that you had already said that you wanted to be. You didn't want to be the bad guy. You wanted to be the one that showed the care and concern. And it's interesting that you said that because I actually had another frat brother on the show some time ago who is a principal, and he talked about one of the main things that drives his students to do well or to, be invested is if you show them that you care.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so I think what you just shared with us in the same regard is, that human level of just showing that care and concern, it goes a very long way. It's not just structured for a particular area, it's a humanistic thing. Like that's something that if we all can do that, you are more than likely going to get a very good response from people because if they know that you care and that you're concerned about them, their attitude towards you, it changes. And
And you
people
know
are able
what?
to detect it if you're sincere or not.
You know what? And that was one of the things I really brought to this job. I never, and like I said, I can talk hours and hours about it. But I remember once I was on lunch break and I was in Subway, and there was a mother and her little son, little African American son. He had to be, I would say maybe 5 or 6 years old, but he's staring at me. And he sort
Hmm.
of has that look like I used to look at police officers. Now
Okay.
he didn't say anything, but I noticed him looking at me. And then all of a sudden, his mother noticed him looking at me, and she said, "You see that guy, that officer over there? If you be bad, he's gonna lock you up." And instantly, this he got scared. And I said,
Hmm.
"Man, don't tell him that." And I said, "Hey, guy," I said, "I'm a good guy. How are you doing?" And I wanted to conversate him, but by then the damage was done
Yeah,
because you could
yeah,
see the fear that he had.
yeah,
Because I
yeah.
didn't want them looking at me like, "Oh my goodness, he's a police. He's gonna lock me if I'm
Hmm.
if I'm bad." No, I want you to be able to say, "Officer, I need help. I want to talk." And it was funny because there was an officer, one of I consider him a mentor, and he was really big on community police. And when I got on the job, he had been on that job for about 8 or 9 years at the time. And I watched how he carried himself in the community, especially the African American community.
Hmm.
He would get out the car, and that was so important. And I would watch him, and he would get out the car and just talk to people. And I said, you know what? When I get through with my training, that's more that I wanted to do. So it was funny because sometimes I would go and I see guys standing around or playing basketball, and I get out the car and they're looking like
Hmm.
something wrong, officer. I'm like, hey,
Right,
how's it going? Hey, you see the Bear game yesterday, or whatever the case may be, and you just have conversations with people. And it got to a point where people started getting comfortable because I didn't want to just only time you see me is because something is wrong.
right.
You know, I really believed in getting out that car saying hi, hey, how you doing? What's your name? I'm James Pickett. I'm blah blah blah, and just talk to them. And that really made a difference. And just to fast forward real quick, when I retired, they had it was a scaled down ceremony because that was in the midst of COVID.
Oh,
Matter of fact, that was June 26, 2020.
okay.
So when I retired, it was a scaled down ceremony. Everybody had their mask on. There were people from the community, and they gave me some presentations and some gifts. And I tell you what, it really floored me because they stood up and talked and you know, Officer Pickett, you did this, you was an impactful. And I'm standing there and I told myself, I said, man, I'm gonna speak, but I'm not gonna cry. Man, I was tears just started flowing. But that really
Yeah,
meant a lot to me.
yeah.
That people looked at me and said, you know what? We were able to talk to that guy.
Hmm.
Because I know what the stain of how law enforcement is. I'm not naive to that. And I understand that. There's history of brutality and everything. And I just did not want to be that type of officer. And I wasn't. I
Hmm.
wasn't. I said, this is how I'm approaching this job. I really was sincere about how I felt about that. Getting out that car, talking to people. I remember one time, another quick story, then we'll move on.
No, you got it.
There was a community event, and that's when the wobble was still popular.
Uh-huh.
And
It's
it was
still
a bunch.
popular now. It's still
And
popular.
it was, I tell you, and I sort of did this on purpose because while we were there, everybody sort of sectioned off, and there was a lot of young people there, and music was playing.
Hmm.
Everybody just sort of looking because they see the police there, and all of a sudden the DJ put on a wobble, and I
Yeah.
said, you know what, this is my time. Next thing I know, I started doing a wobble, and they're looking at me because I remember the alderman in that particular ward. She looked.
Uh-huh.
Next thing I know, Here come the kids.
Oh, yep. Yep.
Finally came out. And they actually, somebody video recorded me doing a wobble. Next thing I know, I had a whole bunch of young people with me doing a wobble.
Mm,
All the men got out there, and some of the adults that were there got out there. And that was just the way I had to break the ice.
you broke the
I'm
ice.
like, look,
Yeah.
yeah, I have this uniform on. I know.
Yeah.
But I'm a man
Mm-hmm.
just like you are.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a person just like you.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I really, and so that really made me feel good when they all started dancing and we had a good time. And from that point on, conversation started flowing more easily.
Right. Again, I'm just hearing that humanity. Like you made it known to people that you were a human and you treated them as if they were humans. And you did not allow for the stigma that people would think of, you being an officer to affect their way of looking at you. You kind of broke that barrier down to say, no, that's not who I am, and that is not who I am trying to be. And I think people got the gist of that. I think you were able to truly, truly show yourself on that job because you wouldn't have had people, like you said, at that event
Right. The
speaking
retirement
on your
event.
behalf in that way if you didn't do that properly. If you didn't execute it the way it was supposed to be executed, they wouldn't have said that stuff. So
Oh no, not at all. I mean, they would have just looked at me. Yeah, it would have
yeah,
been totally different.
yeah, it would have
And if
been
I
very
if I
different.
could share with you two situations that happened when I was on the job that really stood out to me.
Hmm.
I was a patrol officer on midnights, and it was a hot summer night. And during the afternoon shift, things went up for grab. There was a lot of fights going on, and one of the officers got hit with a bottle.
Oh wow.
They arrested the person that threw the bottle at him, but tensions were high.
Hmm.
So while we're sitting in roll call, and it was my beat that it happened in. And I remember some officers that worked in the prior shift came to address our roll call. And they was like, hey man, there's a lot of stuff going on, the tensions. You guys might have to get out there. You might have to, lock some people up and this, that, and the other, blah, blah, blah. And I remember I raised my hand. I said, this is my beat. I said, I'll take care of it. That's all I said. I said, I'll take care of it. As soon as the roll call broke, I got in my car and I drove to one of the areas that a lot of tensions were. And sure enough, there were a lot of people out there. They were mad. They were mad. I called some people over. I said, let's talk. And we talked. I said, you know what? I'm going to be out here all night. I'm here for 8 hours. I said, let's talk. Let's keep things peaceful. You know me. And so we had a nice conversation. They left. I did not get one call of service that night. And I didn't make no arrests, no big drug deals, picking up guns. It was nothing like that. I was proud of the fact that it was quiet,
Yeah, yeah,
peaceful
yes.
that night, because that's all I wanted. Because like I said, I talked to the guys direct. I said, hey man, no things are bad, but look, let's keep this peaceful. And that made me feel good. And another thing that helped me or that really stood out, there was a young man, and he had gotten into a lot of trouble as when he was younger. And I'm driving my squad car, and he flagged me down. He said, Pickett, I missed court the other day. I think I have a warrant. And I said, well, I'll run your name. I said, but if you have a warrant, I got to take you in.
Hmm.
He said, well, if I have a warrant, I'd rather go in with you because I know you'll be fair. So I ran his name, came back with a warrant. He said, no problem. I brought him in. And that's just an example of the rapport that I wanted. He wasn't trying to run, trying to hide, trying to fight. He came up to me and said, I think I got a warrant. I'd rather
Wow.
go in with you
Right.
if I got to go to jail. And I took him in and, I had to arrest him. But that made me feel good that at least he felt that he could come to me, still get arrested,
Hmm.
but he felt at ease doing it.
Hmm.
And I brought him in. And like I said, that's no awards, no big arrests, no, I did this and got kilos of cocaine off the street or I got a whole bunch of guns. This is a guy who felt comfortable enough to talk to me, had to get arrested, but
Hmm.
wanted to go in with me. And I brought him in and there was no issue. And
Hmm.
so that's the type of mark that I wanted to leave. I wanted everybody just to be comfortable
Hmm.
and to be able to talk. Now there were things where, I had to arrest. I mean, you know that. I had to make arrests.
Of course, yeah.
But I wanted, like I said, I really wanted to be that type of officer that you or your son or your nephews could come up to me and say, "Hey, Officer Pickett, can I talk to you?"
Mm-hmm.
Now, I didn't go, Officer Pickett. I better, oh, man, you
Right.
better stay away from him. No, let's come to me. Let's talk.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the type of guy I wanted to be.
Just respect. I mean, just you got respect from showing respect to people.
Right.
And I mean, I don't think I've ever heard someone coming up to a police officer and essentially confessing something, and then coming, so peacefully about it. I mean, your reputation in that beat, in that area, had to have been A1 for someone to have come up to you to peacefully do that.
Right.
So,
You know what? And then, like I said, it made me feel good. And like I said,
yeah, excellent.
that's the mark I wanted to
Yeah.
leave. I wanted to have good police community relationships
Mm-hmm.
because the
Mm-hmm.
police are part of the community. We are a part of the community, and to get to know the community. One of the things that I tried to, impart into my younger officers is that you need to get to know people in the community. Unfortunately, sometimes what happens is, especially if you're really busy, you stay in that squad car. And if you don't get out the squad car, you're going to call to call to call. And the only time you're dealing with people is something happening, whether they're a victim of something or you're given a traffic ticket, parking ticket is negative.
Mm-hmm.
Get out the car.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a simple thing to do. You know, um, get out the car and just start talking to people. Now it's going to be some pushback sometimes. Sometimes people are not going to want to talk to you, and I get it. But you still, I just believe in having that frame of mind where you allow people to vent a little bit. You have to. I remember this one guy, we were talking and I shook a couple of guys' hands and I went to him and he says, "Man, no offense, but I don't shake five O's hand."
Mm-hmm.
Hey man, I understand that. I said, but you know what? I respect it. But it didn't change how I felt about it. And he knew that because he was checking me out. He's like, okay, you don't have to shake my hand. I get it. I didn't get mad and say, what? You're not gonna shake my hand? No, I get it. Because his perception of police was negative.
Mm-hmm.
Understand it. But I think if you take time out to talk, like I said, it may not solve the issues, but at least take time out. I mean, it made a world of difference for me.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, walking on the south side of Chicago with my wife and my youngest son at the time he was a little guy. And we was at the 63rd Street Beach. And there's a young man that I had to arrest one time, and he was there with four or five of his friends. And I noticed him before he noticed me. Now I'm off duty, like I said, I'm off duty with my wife and my child. And you know what he said? "Hey, what's up, Pick? How you doing?" I said, "Hey, how's it going?" He said, "Hey man, we got, we grilling over here, man. You and your family want to come over, man. We can." I say, "Hey man, I appreciate it." I said, "We got some stuff going on, but I appreciate it." This is somebody that I had to arrest.
Wow.
But he didn't like, "Oh man, that's five
Yeah,
O's."
he
It
wasn't
was
salty about it.
nothing. It was
Yeah.
nothing. One of my other sons was playing in the basketball league, and the games were in my beat that I used to work when I was a patrol officer. I would be off duty and I would go sit in the bleachers and the neighborhood would be there. Some of the guys who didn't necessarily like the police were there. I never had an issue with them. They spoke, some of them reluctantly. "What's up, Pickett?" I'm like, "Hey, how's it going, fellas?" And sat there and watched my son play basketball and never had an issue with him
Wow.
because I treated them fair.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it made a world of difference to me. It did.
Mm-hmm.
It made a world of difference.
I gotta ask this because
Okay.
having a personality like that and garnering and honoring the importance of rapport and just having great people skills, that starts from somewhere. And I just want to go back to something maybe that you hadn't really tapped on. But before you became a police officer or you got into that space, you went through the academy.
Yes, sir.
Um, is that where the foundational principle of you being the person that you were on the job started, or was that something that kind of evolved into you just naturally? Just
I
having
think
that.
it I think it was natural. I think it goes
Okay.
way back when I was a child. I've always been level-headed.
Mm-hmm.
I've been described as a very patient guy.
Mm-hmm.
You're patient. I've heard that. Um, so I think the academy, taught me the skills I needed
Okay.
to, to function on the job. But my personality was already there
Mm-hmm.
because that's who I was.
Yeah.
That's who I was. I failed to mention I was in the Marines.
Ah.
I joined the Marines when I was 18, and I was in the reserve side. I didn't go active duty, but 2 days after I graduated high school, I went to Marine Corps boot camp. Wow, that was interesting. I could keep you up for hours about that. But one of the things that the Marine Corps taught me, besides discipline, but patience, because you're getting hollered at. First of all, you're getting hollered at from day one until you graduate. I was there for 12 weeks, and it taught you more patience. Like I said, I was patient to begin with, but it also taught you more. You have somebody screaming in your face, and you got to stand there and take it. So that experience helped me with the job as far as when people are upset. You know, uh, I remember once we had a robbery. A robbery had just occurred, and I was working the midnight shift. And they gave a vague description. It was a black male, 6 feet, possibly wearing blue. And so I'm driving around, and all of a sudden I see a black male. He's about 6 feet. I'm looking at him. He got a little blue on. I'm like, let me just check him out.
Mm-hmm.
Pulled up, sir. I need to talk to you. Instant attitude. Now,
Oh.
turns out I understand because it wasn't him. We got the guy that actually did it, but he was mad. I mean, hey man, y'all always messing with me. It was a lot of profanity. I won't repeat what he said, but he was upset because he thought he's a black man walking down the street minding his own business. Here come the police. He was yelling, but I took time out to talk to him. And at first, he wasn't trying to hear. I said, "Sir, we just had a robbery." He thought I was lying. So I keyed up on my radio and I said, called dispatch and said, "Could you repeat the call that you just put out in the description?" So he heard it. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, we just had an armed robbery, blah, blah, blah. The description is a black male. So he heard it over the radio. And I just looked at him. I said, "Now, do you understand why I stopped you?" He apologized. He says, "Oh, man, I'm sorry." But we ended up having a good conversation. Now, the reason why I'm telling you this story is because not everybody can be that patient. Because like I said, he was mad.
Yeah.
Now, like I said, I'm patient. I'm not going to put myself in danger where I think you're going to, attack me. But if you're just getting mad and venting, I'm not going to like. That's not an arrestable offense because you're mad and you're venting because police stop you.
Right.
So going back to the military, when I'm getting yelled at by the drill instructors and just have to take it, I took it and I listened to the guy, and we ended up having a decent conversation. Because I said, "Sir, I understand why you're mad, but the reason why I stopped you is this." I gave him a reason. I just said, "Hey, come over here."
Mm-hmm.
Pat him down. All right, go about your business. Why did he stop me? It leaves a
Mm-hmm.
bad taste in your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Explain what you're doing because
Mm-hmm.
it was a robbery that just occurred.
Mm-hmm.
It's about 1 o'clock in the morning. You're out here. Hmm. So I just talked to him though. But like I said, you have to be patient. And I think the way I was, as a kid and being patient, level headed, I allowed the guy to vent. And that's okay. That's okay. Why you stop me, man? This is some BS. Well, I'm not gonna grab you and say, "What? What you
Mm-hmm.
no, that's not it.
Mm-hmm.
That's not."
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
like I said, it ended well. We ended up having a
Mm-hmm.
good conversation. We laughed. He went about his business. He was coming home from work. Turns out he was coming home from work. So, like I said, that I didn't necessarily learn that in the academy.
Right.
That part was just the type of person I am.
Yeah.
I'm gonna listen to you.
Right. I'm hearing a lot of emotional intelligence. You're an emotionally intelligent person where you know when and where to kind of execute the emotions, and you know all the signs to either lower it,
Mm-hmm.
raise it, or keep it at a minimum. And I think that's not just with police officers. I think that's something that people
Exactly.
struggle with. Not everybody is able to know how to accurately dispose those emotions. But I think that's a great tool to pull out of your belt, whenever you are charged in anything like that particular situation. Because yeah, that could have been
It could
something
have been bad.
altogether
Right,
different.
right, right. Because like I said, I was a couple of names that had,
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm sure.
but you know what? I've been stopped when I was a teenager. And I
Mm,
know I didn't do anything. I
yeah,
was up against a squad car. So I understood his frustration. Even
yeah,
though I still had a job to do now. I couldn't say,
right,
okay, sir, you're mad. Well, I'm gonna let you walk. I still had a job to do.
right.
But I wasn't gonna yell, scream at this guy, throw him on the car, and it turns out, guess what? He's innocent. He didn't do anything. Now I don't slam this man in the car.
Mm-hmm.
For what? Just listen
Right.
to what he has to say. And then he ended up listening to what I had to say.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
So, I mean, I appreciate all of the examples that you're giving, just kind of, helping us understand and illustrate your journey like you have. I am curious,
sir.
you had the purpose to go into this role in this field for quite some time. Talk about some of the challenges that maybe you kind of incurred while kind of still being motivated to go towards something that you knew that you were supposed to have been doing, but also, there are a plethora of things that kind of happens then that kind of deter us from, continuing moving forward in that purpose. Kind of talk to us a little bit about how that was for you.
Well, one of the things that I really had to come to grips with is what you see on the job. That's I mean, I've seen it. I've seen it. I've seen all type of deaths. The stuff that people read about in the papers, you're there. And that was something that I really had to learn to cope with because one of the things that I'm thankful where law enforcement is pushing toward is you not being afraid to say something bothered me. This particular, because you can get post traumatic stress syndrome. It happens. And when I was a young officer, you're excited about the job, but like I said, you see things, going up to a car accident, and I'm the first one on the scene, and you look in the car like, oh, wow,
Mm,
going to a homicide scene, suicide scene, drownings. I've seen it. I've been there. I've seen it. I've seen people take their last breath. And initially, as a young officer, you had to internalize it because you're like, okay, I don't want nobody to know that. Like my first homicide scene, and I will openly tell you, it bothered me. Not that it was the scene itself, but I humanized it. This woman was killed. Turned out she was murdered by her estranged husband. You go in a house, you could see the food on the stove. He was
mm,
cooking. Her TV was on, and I'm thinking to myself, this woman was just living.
yeah.
Probably thinking, what am I going to do tomorrow?
Yeah.
Here come this guy,
Mm-hmm.
come in and ends her life. And then I was the lead senior officer. I was a rookie, so those are the ones that have to escort the body to the morgue, medical examiner's office. And so here I am, not only dealing with this homicide victim, but now I got to take her to Cook County Morgue, which is in Chicago, and go in this and see several deceased persons.
Mm-hmm.
So as an officer, deal with that. As a first responder, you deal with that. And like I said, I had to learn how to cope. And I'm glad that we moved away from that stigma about, hey, you wanted to be police, man up, man up. It's not normal to see that. It's
No,
not.
no.
It's not. And so that was one of the early things that challenges that I had to do. Like you're going to see something bad.
Right.
You're going to see something bad. Another challenge is sometimes the negative reaction you get from people when they find out that you're a police officer.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I never forget. I was with one of my pledge brothers, and I was still in the reserves at the time. My reserve unit was in Peoria, and so once I got through with my drill, and they called it drill. After drill, I used to go hang out at his house, and this was when the Bulls. That was during the Bulls run, their championships, and it was
Okay.
it was like I think during their second championship.
Early 90s. Okay.
early 90s,
Hmm.
1992, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
So we're at his house and we're watching the Bulls playoffs. And it's me, my frat brother, and two of his friends. First two quarters, man, we're talking, we're having a good time, high five, and the Bulls are winning. Michael Jordan is doing this thing. Then halftime came. And then my frat brother's like, oh man, did I tell you, man? My, my frat over here, man, he's 5-0, man, up by Chicago. All of a sudden, those guys are like, they didn't speak to me the rest of the time.
Whoa.
And this was halftime. So we went through the whole third quarter, the whole fourth quarter. Game ended. Bulls won. They got up. They said, all right, Frank, that's his name. All right, Frank. Didn't say bye to me, walked out. And that was it. And I sat there. I was like, wow, wow.
Wow.
Because I'm a so you had to deal with that. There was some, I mean, that's one of the things I had to deal with. Being looked upon as, man, you a sellout, man. How can you be
Mm,
the police? And I had to, and I've been asked, how could
hmm.
you be the police? You locking your brothers up, that type of thing. So I
Right.
had to learn how to deal with that. I also had to learn how to deal with coming home after a stressful day, you know, family. Because there were times where I just didn't open up. I come home from a bad scene or whatever happened, and I wouldn't say nothing. I come home and my wife, hey, are you okay? Yeah, I'm all right. Knowing I just seen somebody that's got their head blown off.
Mm,
Yeah, I'm all right. I'm cool. I'm cool. Not when I wasn't cool. I wasn't cool, but I just, hey, I'm cool. Yeah, you're laying in bed and you just thinking about what you just saw.
hmm.
You know, so and it's to me it's a rewarding job, but law enforcement is a stress. It's just very stressful job, and
Oh
it
yeah.
doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where or what city you work in. You could be a big city like Chicago, New York, LA. You could be Mayberry, RFD. Things happen. You see things. And like I said, it could be stressful. So I had to deal with that. I came home sometimes, like I said, I'm a little bit on the edge or seeing something or I had to deal with a situation. So I had to learn how to cope, how to not make it affect my family life, my home.
Hmm.
So one of the things that I learned how to do was to talk about it. It's
Mm,
okay to talk about it.
yeah. Yeah.
And my police department, we had a peer support program. And I think that was one of the best things because I'm telling you, brother, it's okay to say, you know what, man, Father, I'm not doing right. Because as you know, there's a high rate of suicide in law enforcement. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, I've known three law enforcement officers that have taken their lives.
Oh wow.
I've personally known three that took their lives. Not saying that and I can't say for a fact that it was the job that did it, but all three were active law enforcement officers when they did it.
Wow.
And one of them, and I don't know if this is healthy or not. I have three saved LinkedIn messages when me and him was going back and forth, and two of the messages was the year that he killed himself, and I never erased it.
Hmm.
Good friend of mine, never erased it. Still have
Hmm.
to this day. So, like I said, very stressful job, but I'm glad that we are moving toward. It's okay to talk about it. It's okay
Yeah.
because back then it was seen as a sign of weakness.
Right. Oh yes, it was. Yeah. Yeah. You had to be like
Like,
a macho person, and if you were to
yes,
talk about it, you
hey,
were seen as being
you
weak.
wasn't. Because let me tell you something, brother. It's not. I've been on baby deaths, man. There's nothing good about that. It's not normal to see that.
Right.
It's not. I've been on the scene of in Lake Michigan where kids decide to go out swimming, and one of them didn't come back, and I'm sitting there with talking. They're two friends who are going nuts, and the kid didn't make it.
Mm.
I've been on the scene where they used me to. I had to do a death notification on a young man who was murdered the night before, and I had to tell his mother and his grandfather because I knew the family. So the chief wanted me to go make that notification. That's a hard thing to tell somebody your son was
That's
shot,
very, very,
murdered,
very hard.
and she's looking at me like, So like I said, so I've had to learn it. To get back to your question, those challenges
Hmm.
you had to learn and deal with. And
Yeah.
also, I did go up in the ranks. I did supervision, and man, whoo, wait, that was an experience being a supervisor. That was that was tough. I was a relatively young sergeant. Um, I took the sergeant's test on my fourth year on the job just to see how the test was going to be, so I
Okay.
could take it in the future. I said,
Right.
you know what, I'm gonna take the test just so I can see, how it is, and you
Right.
know, I ain't gonna get promoted off of this list. I remember I was on vacation when the test results came back, and one of my coworkers called me, James, you're on the A list. I'm like, A list for what? Sergeant. Sergeant. I just, I did well on the test. So my chief did me a solid though. I was still a patrol officer. So he took me out of patrol, put me in an investigation so I could get some experience. I spent some time in investigations as a detective and then the gang crime unit. And then I got promoted to sergeant out of the gang crime unit. But here's what the challenge was. Nobody ever came to me and talked about me in front of my face. Maybe because I know I got a scowl. But man, I heard some things that got back to me. I was 31 years old when I got promoted to sergeant. I was put on a shift where there were guys that were much older,
Mm.
had been on that job much longer than me. That was a challenge. And it was more so a mental challenge for me because at one point I doubted myself. Like, man, I'm a sergeant? How am I going? That guy was my field training officer. He trained me, and now I'm a sergeant saying,
Ah,
that was a challenging journey.
yeah.
That was a challenge because I'm sure in your career you've done supervision. That
Oh
is a
yeah. Oh
thing to
yeah.
do. That was very challenging.
Hmm.
Being responsible, making that call, making that decision when officers call you for guidance. Learning how to deal with the naysayers.
Mm.
And it was some stuff. I remember one of the most famous quotes that got back to me. It's like, how can he get promoted? He still has breast milk on his breath.
Oh, come on now.
Yes. And one of my friends that said it.
Oh,
Oh, one of my guy, he was a Marine, I was a Marine. We had the Marine Corps thing going on, and he was the one that said it. And he got back. Wow. Wow. Really?
hmm.
So that was that, and it got to a point where I had to one day say, why not me? First, maybe year or two, it was tough, but after that, I'm like, you know what? Why not me?
Hmm. Hmm.
I worked hard at this, so I had to get comfortable with it. But I admit that it was that first year or two was very challenging for me.
Yeah. Yeah. You just gave so much knowledge just then. I just want to acknowledge, just some really important things that you said because I know somebody that's watching and listening is also relating a lot to what you're saying. Even though you are highly skilled and you're highly purposeful and you're doing something that you really enjoy doing, it doesn't mean it's not going to be easy. It's going to have some challenges, and it's going to be some things that are said about you
Hmm.
from people that you thought were,
Oh
close as
yeah,
close can be to you.
let me tell you, man, and
And,
if I can say anything about supervision, you're going to have naysayers no matter what.
right.
When it comes to promotion time, I've seen best friends talk about their best friend. There was a point in my career where I was a commander at the time, and all the command staff was together. We was trying to figure out who next sergeants should be. And I'm sitting in this room, and at the time, I wasn't the most senior guy on the job, but I was the most senior supervisor because I remember I was 31 when I
Hmm.
became a supervisor. And I'm watching all this bickering back and forth. And I'm watching everybody, and they're talking about other people. And I said, can I say something? Everybody looked at me. I said, just like you guys are talking about the soon to be supervisor. I said, each one of you guys in here, I've heard something bad about when y'all about to get promoted. And they was like, they look, my best friend on the job, who was a hell of a police officer, he ended up being a hell of a sergeant and a hell of a commander. They talked about him, and he was like, they talked about me. I said, you know why? My friend never wanted to leave patrol.
Mhm.
He loved patrol. He was an experienced patrol officer. He was a senior patrol officer. He was also an evidence technician. Knew the job. Excellent police officer. The knock on him, he ain't never been in the detective bureau. He never been in a specialized, why should he? And I said, and I've heard them say that. I said, it gets so ugly. So I guess anybody who's listening, I would say, you know what? Keep going for the best. Keep
Mhm.
going for it. Because you know what? If you listen to what the negative things that come out, it might stop you. Because like I said, I was apprehensive.
Yeah.
The first round of promotions when I was in the A list and the chief promoted like 8 or 9 sergeants right away. And I wasn't on that. I didn't make the first run. Do you know I was relieved? I was like, they said, oh man, James, you didn't make that first cut. I was like, good, because I was still doubting myself.
Mm. Mhm.
But after a while, I said, wait a minute, why not me?
Why not
So I
you?
would tell anybody who's listening, if supervision is in your future and you want to be a supervisor, go for it. The only thing I would say is learn as much as you can.
Mhm.
Don't stop learning. And don't be afraid to ask questions of people who you're supervising. There were
Mhm.
people who I was quote unquote in charge of who were experts in certain. I would go to them and was honest. I wasn't the type of guy that said, hey, Sherman, I'm the boss. You no, I'm saying, hey, I don't understand this. Can you explain this to me? How do you do
Right.
this? What?
Mhm.
But like I said, anybody that wants to be a supervisor, don't let the naysayers, because the naysayers are going to be there anyway.
They
They're
are.
going to be there. It gets ugly during promotion time. It gets jealousy. All of a sudden, your best friend who thought you was the greatest patrol officer ever say, man, he
Mhm.
didn't do this or he
Mhm.
doesn't know how to do. I had to learn. And so my other promotions, I was good after that.
Mhm.
But I went for commander, got it. Somebody like that. They had something to say. By then, my skin got a little thicker.
Right. Right. And it
Yeah,
comes.
that's right.
It comes with
I'm going
time.
for it.
Right. Yeah. It comes with time.
It comes with time. Yes.
Thank you so much for bringing that up. I mean, that's
Sure.
so important for people to hear and to acknowledge. And you lived it, and I know that you can speak to it. So I appreciate you sharing just that. So I do want to pick your brain about the position that you're in now,
Yes,
and
sir.
your experience, of course, has led you to so many different places, and of course, it led you to this one as well. How has it been just kind of getting out of the space that you were in and in this space now? And what is it like? What does it feel like
Well, you
being
know
there?
what? I have to be honest with you. It's been a breath of fresh air. And I'm gonna
Wow.
tell you why. I've always wanted to work. And once I retired, I knew I was going to work. That was my goal.
Yeah.
Because I retired, I was 53 when I retired. So I wasn't going to be finished. I wanted to take a little time, but I wanted to be choosy on what I chose. And I didn't want to be sworn anymore because I had opportunities. I could have been a chief somewhere. I could have been a chief at my department. I could have took over another department. I had a good run. Okay. I enjoyed my law enforcement career. I have no regrets. I'm not one of those guys that retired and will dog out the department. I just knew it was time. So with my second career, I still wanted to investigate because I still had that thing in me where I still
Hmm.
wanted to do that, but not as a sworn officer.
Hmm.
So basically, I'm looking for, jobs. I said, I'm an experienced investigator. What can I look? And I'm looking at the website and I said, internal affairs for the fire department. Well, I did 2 years internal affairs at my department. When I was a commander, the chief sent me there for 2 years. So I had experience in internal affairs. So I said, fire department, this can't be too bad. I applied right away. I was on the computer. As soon as I saw it, uploaded my resume, hit send, they interviewed me. I tell you what, I love it because it still whets that investigative appetite that I still have
Yeah.
without being a sworn police officer. So I still get some cases where I'm digging in and I'm looking at stuff, looking at video. doing my interrogations. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the post law enforcement career that I was looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been a blessing. It's been, like I said, it's a totally different thing because the fire department culture is totally different from the police culture. Um, but it's really been a good career. I tell you what, one of my coworkers who actually did my background investigation when I was getting on the fire department, he had to come when he came to visit me. He said, "I'm gonna tell you what." He said, "I've never had one bad day at work." And he said, "I'm not trying to make sell you a bill of goods, but I haven't. I have not had one bad day. I
Wow.
go to work smiling. I mean, it's a full-time job. I work Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 4:30. It gets busy because right now we're in a busy section, right? It's been really busy lately. But I love it, man. And it was like, and I love going to work where I'm doing my job. I get to work, fire up my computer, and I'm doing my thing. And like I said, it's a blessing. And I thank God every day. I'm telling you, man, because this is the job I was looking for post law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
It's really beginning. It's an interesting job. It's just internal affairs. I do investigate complaints from the public against the firefighters and paramedics, but I also do background investigations for applicants, and that's probably one of my favorite jobs because when I call the applicants and say, "Hey, my name is Investigator James Pickett. I've been assigned to do your background," just the excitement because now they're getting the call, and it reminds me back when I was going through my process in law
Right.
enforcement.
Right.
And these young men and women who want to be firefighters or paramedics, they get so excited, like, "Oh, my name came up on the list," and I'm doing that background, and it's a good feeling, because they're excited about it,
Mm-hmm.
especially when they get that call, like, "Okay, you passed your background, you start the academy on December 1st," and just to see that excitement in these young men and women that are starting their career, and it brings me back to when I started my career. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I really like it. It's a very interesting job. It's
It,
very interesting.
it sounds like that fire is still there.
It's there. It's
Yeah.
there. And you know what? And I'm gonna be honest with you, man. Don't tell nobody. Once in a while, I do miss the job.
Mm-hmm.
Not as much as I thought I would. Every once in a while, I see a police car go by with their lights on. Now I know it takes me back to when I was a little kid. Like, oh man, I remember them days when I would go to calls. Or so it does. I mean, it's still there.
If you've done something as long as you did in that capacity, you're gonna, have those moments. So I think that's only normal. I think that's
Right.
only normal to feel that.
Yeah, man, I do get excited, and it's funny because where I work, I'm at the Chicago Police and Chicago Fire Department share the same building for the headquarters, and so I see police officers every day.
Yeah.
And it's funny, like the ones I've gotten to know, they'll ask me, how long you been at the fire department, and and we'll get to talking, and they'll find out that I'm, retired law enforcement, but I don't volunteer it.
Right.
Sometimes I'll talk to these officers, and especially the ones that as of late because of the things that's been going on in law enforcement. They'll look at me, "Oh, you work for the fire department. You were smart. You was a good thing you didn't do law enforcement." And I just look at them and smile, like,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But yeah, it's in there. The little flame still flickers a little bit.
I think it's there. I see it. It's
It's
there.
still there. I still get excited, but like I said, I wanted to leave when I still enjoyed it. And
Mhm.
I'm explaining. Let me explain it because some people work until I'm gonna keep working, but I see too many people on my job overstay their welcome,
Oh yeah.
and they're not effective anymore because everybody and one of my I have to give this quote. One of my former friends, she was a commander. She retired as a commander with the Evanston Police Department. She used to tell me, everybody has a season. Sometimes that season is over. Because when she was about to retire, I was like, "Are you about to leave? Why are you leaving?" She said, "My season is over." And I used to like look at her like, But she's right. Because I wanted to go when I still enjoyed it as opposed to becoming disgruntled or because I know there was some guys you'd be like, "Man, when is he gonna retire?
Mhm.
He should have been gone 5 years ago." I wanted to go out on top where I
Right.
still enjoyed the job. I was still young enough to do something else. And I did. And I walked out with no regrets. I don't regret retiring. I knew it was
Mhm.
time. And it allowed me, like I said, it allowed me time to stay at home, for a year and a half. I spent a lot of time, with my wife and my youngest son, who's a great athlete. I got a chance to follow him in his pursue his dreams of being a
Mm-hmm.
football
Mm-hmm.
player, and my grandsons. You know,
Mm-hmm.
because my son was like, "Oh, what you doing? Nothing. I don't work. Okay, I'm gonna drop the kids off. Boom, here they are." And I loved it. I loved
Yeah.
it. But it was time
That
to work.
that is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I'm so glad that you were able to share that with us. One last question for you. What is one word that affirms who you are?
I would say caring. I care. I really, and like I said, I know it sounds corny, but to be honest with you, I do care. I do. I mean, and I would tell these young men, and just to go back when I used to be on the street, and there were two instances, and these are true stories. I'm not going to say the names, but there were two young men who got immersed in the gang life. And I saw good in these two guys, and and one in particular, we had a good report. Now he was offered to that gang life, but we would talk. And one day I had to do a report because somebody tried to shoot him and they shot up the car. And I'm doing a report and he's giving me the information. And then he looked at me. He said, I know I ain't going to be around long. He said, you going to come to my funeral when I get killed. He said, I want you to come to my funeral. I said, man, come on. He was 21 years old. I said, man, you're going to outlive me. What you talking? A year later, he got killed.
Mm.
Fast forward a couple of years, another young man who I had to arrest when I was a juvenile detective. He was gang banging, but I still saw something in him. And I said, you can get off the streets, man. When? I know, Pick. I know. We got a call, man, down in the alley. And the first unit that got there, you could tell when somebody's deceased. The
Mhm.
first unit got there, says, oh, I need a supervisor. I need a, ET. I'm like, it was a homicide. But me and my partner went. I was in the gang unit at the time. Nobody knew who he was. So we walked into the scene. I'm the one that identified. I looked down. I was like, oh man, now that is a trip when you actually talk to somebody about 3 weeks before when he was on the street and then he's there. And these two young men, even though they were into their stuff, but I cared about these guys because I saw something in them. I saw something in them. And it's like, I felt like, man, maybe I would have stayed on them more or
Mhm.
said something different. But both of them were murdered
Mhm.
in the street violently. And these are two young men that I saw something good, but they went in that direction. But I cared, man. And the thing about it, going back to the first guy, I didn't go to his funeral. The only reason why I didn't go because I didn't want to, because I heard about it, and it was a gang style funeral. They had decked him out and all his stuff, and his fellow gang members were there, and I didn't want to
Right.
interrupt that. But it bothered me because I said, man, I'm telling this guy, man, you're gonna outlive me, and he got murdered. And like I said, so when you ask me about the one word, I do care. I care about these young men and women out here. I do. I didn't want to just lock them up and send them away. I did. I want them to do better, and so if there's anything that I know, because deep down inside, I'm a sensitive guy. I try under this rough exterior. I always kid my wife about that, but I do care.
Yeah.
I sincerely care about our young people.
I think that's apparent, and I think everybody that watched this feels the same way that I do. That kind of confirms that I think that is the absolute word that affirms who you are, Brother Pickett. Thank you so very much for joining us tonight on the show and dropping so much knowledge and information on your journey and finding your purpose, and just inspiring listeners, watchers to find their purpose, and to just enjoy what you're doing, and having that calling whenever you have a calling to do something, how it works for you when you actually follow it. So I thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you, and I
Uh,
really appreciate you having me, and I really enjoyed it.
oh, this was great. It's great. I appreciate it as well. What's something that you're grateful for today?
I am grateful for the opportunity to just talk, share this with you and anybody that watches this that can get something positive out of.
Mhm.
One, law enforcement is needed, but we're not all bad. There's more majority guys and women out there that care about this job. You got your bad apples. I'm not naive to that. And I'm not gonna even try to sugarcoat that. There are bad apples out there that tarnish our profession. But I want people to just know that there are law enforcement officers out there that care about you, care about your family, care about your children. They do because they put their lives on the line every day for you.
Mhm.
So that's one of the things I want people to just say, you know what? There are good officers out there. There are officers who care.
Yeah.
And also the other thing is getting back to the supervision point. I'm really big on that. Don't let anybody stop your dream. Don't let the naysayers say, "Oh, you're not going to be a good supervisor. Why there?" No, go for your dream.
Mhm.
Because if you keep listening to the naysayers, that'll stop you. It almost stopped me because I was hesitant. I'm not, I'm gonna be honest about that. But just keep going for your dreams.
I'm grateful that I was able to share this platform so that you could expound on who you are and exhibit a different side that people probably wouldn't have seen. I'm gonna be honest with you.
Right.
So that's my gratefulness moment, just that you were able to expound on your journey and allow for people to see a different side of what they probably do see in the law enforcement world. So I am exceedingly grateful for that, Brother Pickett. Thanks again for
Appreciate
joining
you.
tonight. For everybody that's watching, I'm going to put my screen up. Please feel free to follow me on all my social platforms. Go to YouTube, subscribe to my page. You can watch this episode and many other episodes to catch up on maybe an episode that you haven't seen, but make sure that you do that. And join us again next week. We're going to have another amazing topic, another amazing guest. I want you to have a great rest of the evening. Have a great weekend.